Tribalism versus corporatism. That's my topic for today. This is the Desert Shaman in the Shaman's Den in southern Nevada. Well, in regards to the world today and what's going on in the Middle East, I was thinking about tribal people, and I was listening to some tribal music actually earlier. Arabic music and Sufi music and things like that, which I'm a big fan of Middle Eastern music. It's very emotional and intense, and sometimes it can be joyful, like a gypsy girl dancing around a fire with bells on and incense and that type of thing. Or it can be very down-to-earth, nitty-gritty, warrior-oriented with throbbing drums and strings and whatever. So it's very two-sided, right? And so the side that is the warrior side, shall I say, that inspirational music, that urging on type music, that just basic warrior music is very inspirational as well. And it also gives you a look into the mindset of, let's say, a tribal warrior, somebody that thinks in the realms of survival and freedom, that type thing, because a lot of times these tribal people, when they become warriors, it's kind of inbred into them. When they exhibit that, it's nitty-gritty stuff, it's real stuff, it's heartfelt. It's based on their spirituality and their take on the world and where they're coming from, and are they trying to overthrow oppression or tyranny. Has to do with freedom. Has to do with wanting to be free. And that is a very strong emotion. That is a very driving emotion. That is a very strong-willed emotion. Now you pit that up against, let's say, an army from the West, or some type of American army or something like that. You're going to see a world of difference, and you're going to see strong resolution to acquire or to complete their goals. You're going to see a strong determination. And it has to do with something coming from their heart rather than being ordered about by some corporate state, all right? So the corporate mentality uses people, okay, uses individuals to fight for them, fight their mercenary wars, their wars for money and greed and power, and taking land from others, taking freedom from others. It's a paid soldier, whereas the soldiers that, or the warriors that come from, let's say, a tribe, a Middle Eastern tribe, are much more hardy, okay, and much more grounded, and much more determined. Again, determined. So what does the West think it's doing right now? What is the West doing? What is it thinking when it is trying to arouse passions from these tribal people? Deep-seated passions of maybe revenge, maybe fighting for freedom, maybe it could be any number of things. What is the West thinking when it's instigating these kind of reactions from tribal people? So my answer is, it's not thinking at all. It's not realizing the true gravity of what's being put into motion here. It's not about one group of freedom fighters like Hamas. You can call them whatever you want, but basically what they are freedom fighters. So it's not about one group being threatened and the others trying to protect it. It's more about that way of living, that way of thinking, that tribal mentality, that freedom fighter mentality. It's more about keeping that intact, okay? It doesn't matter how many other freedom fighters, or you can label them terrorists or whatever you want. Most of these people are tribal people we're talking about here in the Middle East, and with this conflict with Gaza and Israel and all this stuff. They're not lily-livered wimps, okay? They're hardcore fighters. And so when you get into a situation where you become the enemy of these people, anything goes, all right? And the tribes always had their weapons, okay? Now let's touch on this a little bit. The tribes always had their weapons. They made them themselves. They made the finest knives and even guns and AK-47s and everything else by hand. But they don't just need that, or they don't just have that anymore. They have other weapons now. They have more sophisticated weapons filtering in from places like Ukraine, where we have pumped billions of dollars and lots of weapons that went on the black market and were never seen again. That's what you have there. And these weapons are filtering their way to other places, other countries, some that even have gun laws, like France and all kinds of places. The market's wide open now. So these tribal people with this tribal mindset have other weapons at their disposal, and they will use those weapons just like they would use a knife or a dagger or a gun, all right? They will use it to secure what they believe is their worldview. And their worldview is freedom, and their worldview is non-oppression, and their worldview is not letting other people fuck with them, all right? So you may think, well, that's over there. Yeah, that could happen over there in the Métis. But no, if you think that, you're way off base, because with the open borders that we have here in America, all those tribal people, not all of them, but a good deal of them, are infiltrating in. And not just those tribal people, but all kinds of factions and cults and gangs, all right? So what you have here is an open border where everything is coming in, and you don't know what's in here, what kind of cells, what kind of freedom fighters or terrorists or whatever you want to call them are here. I'm amazed that up to this point there hasn't been some kind of incidents that would indicate this, all right? Thank your lucky stars, there hasn't been anything anywhere near what you would see in like Beirut or Lebanon or Syria or any of these places where there is a faction that is readily apparent by burned out buildings and utter, earthy grassroots warfare, okay? That has not come to settle on America's shores, but that doesn't mean it isn't here already, and that doesn't mean that you should feel safe, okay, because you're in America, all right? You have to look at some of the theology and some of the views of some of these oppressed freedom fighters, their religious views, their spiritual views. America has been known to be called the Great Satan, and you might scratch your head and go, what do you mean the Great Satan? We're the Christian nation here. But if you look at it from a very high spiritual point of view, or a very, let's say, disciplined view, religious view, it's a wasteland of materialism. is what it is. That's the way they look at America. Everything is materialistic. Nothing has any soul. Nothing has any meaning. Nothing has any deep meaning. Nothing has lives up to what it purports to be as the great free nation and freedom of religion and freedom of this and freedom of that, and anything is available to you in the way of material goods and all that kind of thing. That doesn't mean squat to these people, because that's just a display of the head of the snake, or the head of the fish, which is if the head's rotten, then the whole rest of the fish is going to be rotten. From the head on down. And that's the way America is right now. It's a cesspool of criminality and materialism and greed and power. And so these smaller factions, these tribal factions that look at this stuff, are going to see it for exactly what it is. And it well could be called, if you want to go by Islamic scriptures, or even Jewish scriptures, or whatever biblical scripture, derived scripture, it could well be called the Great Satan in their eyes, couldn't it? Because look at the trouble it's causing around the world. Look at the heartache. Look at the mass murder. Look at the hegemony. Look at the belligerence. Look at the pridefulness. Has nothing to do with spirituality. And yet, the rank and file of this country claims to be Christian, all right? Christianity is the same branch of the Abrahamic tradition as Islam and other religions. Only the people here, although there may be people in America that feel like they're true Christians, the whole tenor or the texture or the color of America is not that, all right? That was gone a long time ago. What has creeped in is a corporatocracy. And that's what, it's so different than what the tribal people feel. They're not into corporate. They're not into rule by law. They're not into rules of law. They're not into delusions and hallucinations coming from the rabid minds of the deep state of the West, all right? They're not into that stuff. Now, America is this land, the borders, all that stuff is very vulnerable right now. If they have that feeling about this being the deep state, the Satan, okay, the great Satan, sorry about that, the great Satan, if they have this mindset, then what are they going to do? They're going to try to bring it down. They're going to try to bring it down. And again, never underestimate the tribal mindset. Look at what happened back in Pancho Villa's day and Zapata, how they overthrew tyranny. Look at other things. Look at the Apache Wars in Arizona, where they were set upon by the tyrannical nature of the Bluecoats and the government, and were supreme guerrilla fighters, and it was really, really hard to take them down, okay, without a lot of loss of life. And some never gave up to the last man, all right, and escaped capture for years and fought tooth and nail against oppression. This is nothing new, people. This has been around for eons, decades, millennia, whatever. So if you think for 1 minute, okay, that you're going to stir up tribal sentiments in some Middle Eastern country, and for that matter, that fact, around the world, because there's tribes all around the world, or parts of tribes that have embedded other parts of the world. So if you think you're going to arrest that mentality, or somehow corral that mentality, You're thinking crazy. You're just going to increase it, all right? You're going to increase hatred for the great Satan, in their words. This is not leading anywhere good as to what's going on in the Middle East right now. It's just like the oppression of the Native Americans. And when you start hearing words like genocide, and when you start seeing images like genocide, and when you start seeing blatant murder of masses of people right before your very eyes, then you know that you must listen to the wind, okay, and pick up on the fact that things are pretty dicey. They're pretty dicey right now. How long will it take before these freedom fighters to just start thinking, well, you know, if one freedom organization goes down, if one organization goes down, then what's to prevent all the rest of us from going down? Doesn't matter if they're centered in on the same exact agenda. They're all of the same ilk, and that ilk is, what if one goes down, then we all go down. Well, what does that do? That activates a resistance. And that resistance is a form of energy. And if you don't think that energy needs a place to go and will find a place to go, think again. Think again. But I doubt if there's anybody thinking in this country right now. I don't think people even think. I don't think they reason. I don't think they have, and if they do, they don't hold their leaders or their tyrants or their government accountable for the harm that putting them in harm's way. Just isn't happening. And I don't even want to compare the militia groups over here or the movements over here or the patriot militias over here with anything like you got in a tribal faction, because next to them, they're a bunch of lily-livered wimps, all right? So that's the way I see this tribalism versus corporatism. And the corporate machine doesn't have a soul, doesn't have a religion, doesn't have a belief system, doesn't have any kind of morality. And they're accusing these tribal people, these people that live from the heart of the soul, or the soul of the heart, and are moralists in some respect, much more than you would ever find over here. There is nothing here in America that isn't a cartoon, that isn't a commercial, that isn't a facade, that isn't a scam, that isn't a game. And usually it's about money. Even organizations that declare themselves spiritual on all levels. So listen up, people, and look around you and see what's going on, all right? Am I saying to get angry about it? No, I'm saying wake up. And that's another thing, this term woke, what a joke. Woke is a joke. Because woke means you're awake. It means you see things. And that's just the opposite. The term woke to me means blind, means follower, means following a set of patterns or a set of, sets of dogma or an agenda of equality that isn't equality at all, but is a complete subterfuge for using certain organizations and people for a political agenda or for a no good, evil, dark agenda. So that term woke to me is a dirty word, all right? Has nothing to do with being awake or being enlightened or seeing the big picture. Nothing. So anyway, there's some food for thought for the day. In case you weren't thinking about that kind of thing, you can think about it now and thank me for it. I'm going to keep this video relatively short and innocuous so that I don't want to cause a tidal wave or a tornado here and actually get people coming from a higher level of consciousness and seeing things for what they really are. Oppressed people of the land, rise up and do something about it in one way, shape, or another. You're not going to do it by voting. I got news for you. It ain't going to happen. You're not going to be voting for freedom if you're voting in the political process in the United States. There is no such thing as that here. While there's this phony two sides of the same coin, two wings of the same bird, the right and the left and the Democrat. What a joke. What a joke. Don't waste your time. And this political year is going to be, you're going to be swamped with bullshit. All right? So as Joe Pesci would say, forget about it. All right? Forget about it. Don't even think for a minute that your freedom depends on the political process here, and I'll be surprised even if there's even an election, the way things are going. Anyway, I think I'll leave it there today. Enough for you to think about. This is the Desert Shaman, and tune in again next time for more ranting and raving.